The better many school leaders become at leadership, the heavier leadership seems to feel. And that should make us pause. I've heard a version of this from school leaders for years, not usually leaders at the beginning of their journey. More often, it comes from experienced principals, deputies, and system leaders who've become more capable over time. They understand strategy more deeply. They have stronger systems. They read culture with more precision. They make better decisions than they did 5 or 10 years ago, and yet many describe the same pattern. Why does leadership feel harder even when you're getting better at it? That is the paradox at the center of what I call the sustainability myth. The usual explanation is workload, and of course, workload absolutely matters. School leaders are carrying enormous pressure, compliance demands, staffing challenges, well-being needs, community expectations, and improvement agendas that just keep accumulating. Now, Riley's work on principal well-being has shown year after year just how much pressure school leaders are carrying. Now, workload explains a significant part of the pressure, but it does not account for the whole pattern. Many of the leaders asking this question have already developed strong habits, strong teams, and strong systems. Their concern is not simply, how do I get through the work? Their concern is closer to this. Why is the work becoming harder to sustain even as I become more capable? And that question changes the diagnosis. Most sustainability conversations focus on visible resources: time, staffing, funding, support, and well-being structures. And of course, all of those matter. But there's another leadership resource we rarely name with the same seriousness: professional judgment. Professional judgment is the ability to interpret context, sequence priorities, adapt implementation, and decide what matters most for your community. It's not an optional extra, it's the work of leadership. And leadership is not simply implementation, it's interpretation. This is especially important because much of school leadership is adaptive work. Heifetz's work helps us see that adaptive challenges require judgment, learning, interpretation, and adjustment. They can't simply be solved by applying a procedure. Culture is adaptive work, trust is adaptive work, school improvement is adaptive work. And when adaptive work is treated mainly as implementation work, leadership starts to feel different. Leaders remain accountable for outcomes, but they have less room to decide how those outcomes should be achieved. And that creates a form of pressure we don't always name clearly. And here's a more useful way to think about sustainability. Some pressure is workload pressure, the visible volume of meetings, emails, reports, deadlines, interruptions, and operational demands. Some pressure is complexity pressure, the number of variables leaders have to hold inside each decision. Student needs, staff well-being, parent expectations, budget, culture, strategy, and long-term consequences. Now, those two pressures can be significant. Leadership can be demanding, complex, and tiring while still remaining sustainable, especially when leaders retain enough professional judgment to decide what matters, what comes first, and how the work should be adapted to their context. Judgment pressure, it changes the equation. Judgment pressure appears when leaders remain accountable for outcomes while feeling increasingly constrained in how they can respond. It's the pressure of knowing your context but having less room to adapt, sequence, contextualize, or prioritize. Workload and complexity make leadership demanding. Judgment pressure is often what makes it unsustainable. And that's why this diagnosis matters. A leader who misreads judgment pressure as workload pressure may solve the wrong problem. They may try to become more efficient when the deeper need is greater professional discretion. They may refine their calendar when the deeper issue is shrinking space to determine what deserves attention. This doesn't make workload more irrelevant, it makes the diagnosis more precise. The way we name pressure shapes the way we respond to it. So if leadership feels harder than it did 5 years ago, the question may not be only how much more leaders are carrying, it may also be how much less room they have to decide what matters. Now, I explore this more deeply in the full leadership paper, The Sustainability Myth, including the judgment compliance gap, strategic compliance, and why sustainable leadership depends on protecting professional judgment. And you can download it through a link in the description. Sustainable leadership begins when we trust leaders to exercise the judgment we hold them accountable for.